Good morning. I am the Air Force Sergeant Association Division 6 President James Weigel, and this is Legislative Awareness Week. With me today, I have retired Chief Master Sergeant Jim Lockwood. Thanks for joining us today, Jim.
My pleasure, thank you.
Today I'd like to speak a little bit about the PAC Act, a recent legislation that affects a lot of people. It's been said this is the biggest legislation for military in half a century. Would you mind speaking a little bit about it?
Sure. One of the things you have to keep in mind is big agencies like the Veterans Administration, Department of Defense, Department of Energy, Education, and so forth, only implement programs that they're told that they have to, because their budgets are not their own. They don't control them. And what this PACT Act does is it not only provides relief for those who were harmed because of burn pits over in the Middle East. It also picked up other pieces of legislation to further protect veterans all the way back to Vietnam. One of the big problems we had after Vietnam was people who had been exposed to Agent Orange were pretty severely hurt and came up with a lot of different afflictions, but the VA would not cover it. And for years they denied it and they blocked it, and then finally we got the legislation passed to where Vietnam veterans were being offered relief for Agent Orange. However, the way they defined it, it did not apply to the Navy, who were in those contiguous waters. It did not apply to people that were in Thailand and Laos and neighboring countries, and we did have a good number of people there, some covert and otherwise. But what the PACT Act does is it also now opens up claims against Agent Orange for those people. It also provides coverage for those that have medical conditions as a result of the atomic testing, which was pretty extensive prior to the time that we dropped the first atomic bomb. So this goes way back.
But all kinds of toxic materials, essentially.
Right, but immediately what it does is, and the reason today for the Act's passage really centers on the burn pits, where things like human waste and medical equipment and all sorts of other things were burned. And obviously it's people serving in the military that were burning these things, and a lot of people, some people estimate 50,000 people came down with different kinds of cancer, respiratory diseases, and some other things. And what this does is it's picked out 23 different types of cancer and otherwise, and it calls them presumptive, meaning it will you will not have to prove service connection for whatever your condition is. If you, for example, were stationed over there during a particular period when they were burning things in burn pits, and you were in the country during that time, and you put in a claim for prostate cancer, that's one of them covered, it will be automatically presumed that there was a service connection, so you're going to get relief from the VA. So very, very comprehensive piece of legislation, probably the most that I've ever been aware of, even more than some of the things we did for the Vietnam era. And hopefully, and it's actually named after a sergeant first class named Heath, I believe, that died of a type of lung cancer and applied for it, and it was denied because it wasn't covered by the VA. Not that the VA didn't want to do it, but they weren't allowed to.
I understand.
So that's basically what the PACT Act is.
I know this is very emergent, where it affects many of our serving members today with the burn pits, and it sounds like it was the catalyst to really loop in a lot of other things
Yes, sir.
that really needed the support. Great. So how do members who have maybe been subjected to burn pits or other hazardous chemicals who are looking to take part in these VA benefits, where do they start? How do they apply?
When you separate or retire from the military, you will be strongly encouraged as part of the Transition Assistance Program briefings that you have. You'll be strongly encouraged to put in for a VA healthcare assessment. basically what they will do is they will look at your military medical record and say, yeah, you had problems with your back, you had problems with your knee, you had problems with this or that. Let's do a separate physical. And they actually do. They'll schedule them. If you were here, you would go down to Salt Lake to the big veterans hospital down there, and you would have a series of medical evaluations. And depending on the severity of your situation, as long as there was a service connection, you might get 10% for your knee, 20% for your back, 20% for your hearing, and so forth. And if your disability level reaches 50% in total, you'll get to keep all of your military retirement pay if you want to retire, and all of your VA disability compensation. If it's less than 50%, and we'll talk more about that, I'm sure, but if it's less than 50%, then you pay for your own disability. For every dollar the VA gives you, you're going to lose $1 on your retirement. Another thing that Air Force Sergeants Association is working on getting corrected. So it's during that period of assessment, right after you separate, that you would put your claims in on it. You know, you would say, I was at Bahrain, or I was at Qatar, or wherever you happen to be, or it could be Afghanistan, or it could be Iraq, and they've even lumped in as part of that act other locations like Afghanistan. And if you have prostate cancer, it would say, for example, and there are several kinds of cancer, they will presume that it was caused by your military connection. You will get a disability for that.
That's big, that burden of proof isn't back on the member.
It is, that's called presumptive, and there are certain things. It took us a long time to get Agent Orange, a number of medical conditions, and tie them to Agent Orange as presumptive. That took us quite a while to get that done. And again, AFSA was a big player in getting that done. We are, by charter, a veteran service organization. And in fact, because as a nonprofit, 501c19, we are called a Veterans and Military Association.
So thank you for bringing all your expertise to the table, helping share that perspective that you had based on a lifelong career. I know you're very much so into AFSA legislation still. Thank you to Chapter 1163 for hosting this event, and thank you for joining us for Legislative Week.
Good.